Hi guys, and welcome back to the next video on my channel. Now, as promised, this week's video is a missing persons case, and this is a case that raises a lot of questions and debate and discussion about what kind of cases make it into national media and make the headlines compared to missing persons cases that you rarely hear of, and it's something we'll discuss later on in the video. It's coming up to 23 years since the disappearance of Patrick Warren and David Spencer. 13-year-old David Spencer and 11-year-old Patrick Warren went missing and have never been seen again when they went out on Boxing Day of 1996 to ride their new bikes. They have since been presumed dead, and a new appeal was launched on the 20th anniversary in 2016 to try and catch the boys' killer. Today we're going to look into the case, discuss the different issues and what could have possibly happened to the boys. Both boys were from Chelmsley Wood, which is on the edge of Birmingham, and it's been described as a not very safe area, or it wasn't very safe at the time of the boys' disappearances. This is not my personal opinion, this is just what I've read online when researching this case. Sadly, this case wasn't taken seriously from the offset because the boys were from a lower class council estate background and they were classed as quite naughty boys. As we go on to discuss, these boys weren't exactly the perfect angels that we usually hear about in the media when children go missing. Patrick Warren, or Paddy as he was known to most people, was one of 7 siblings in an Irish family. He had a love of football, his favourite food was noodles, and one of his favourite things to do was poke fun at his mother for her very strong Irish accent when she got angry. His mother, Bridget Warren, said she won't pretend to act like he was an angel because he wasn't. He had a bit of a wild side, he was a bit cheeky, but overall he was a very well-liked boy. And other parents and teachers described him as a little bit cheeky, but good to be around and, hard-working student. David Spencer, on the other hand, was a keen boxer, and footage was actually released of him in a charity match on, I think, several years later to try and jog people's memories of the boys. He was an adorable lad, but with a bit of a naughty side. He didn't like discipline, and quite often he took the law into his own hands, which landed him in and out of youth prison throughout his younger years. Despite this, his teachers said they were very surprised that he wasn't actually found earlier because he was actually quite streetwise, and this is a term that's actually been known as quite damning in this case. Because the boys were known as streetwise, people thought that they were just running away and playing a big game. They didn't take this case seriously because they thought the boys were so naughty that they'd run away and that one day they'd just come back. But as this brings up a discussion in this case, it doesn't mean that these boys didn't deserve to be found. Just because they were a little bit naughty, they didn't fit into the perfect angelic child that we usually see in a missing persons case, doesn't mean they didn't deserve to be found. Doesn't mean that they didn't deserve the same level of coverage, the same level of police work as any other cases. So what happened on this eventful night then? Paddy had been gifted a new bike for Christmas, and on Boxing Day the boys had been out all day playing on the bike, playing around the estate, and they bragged about going on a big adventure. Now, around midnight, David came home and told his mother that he was going to stay at Patrick's for the night. So obviously this was a completely different time, 20 plus years ago. The boys were supposed to go straight to Patrick's, which was a short walk and an even shorter bike ride away. But of course, being young boys and being a bit rebellious, they didn't go straight home. They were actually spotted by a police officer on a frozen lake, according to some sources. And then the last time they were seen is when they stopped off at a petrol station to ask for biscuits. I'm not sure if they had money. Most sources seem to say they didn't have money, they'd gone in there to try their luck. And some sources do say the last time they were seen was walking towards the Chelmsley Wood shopping centre, but this is conflicting in different reports, so I'm just putting out every possible aspect out there. From the offset, although police treated this as a normal investigation, you could tell that it wasn't given the same respect as maybe some more of the high-profile cases we've seen in national media. This case never made it past local media, and these boys were made out to be runaways. The police insisted to the local media that they were just runaways, they were very street smart, and that they would come home and they were just playing a big game. Despite this view though, they did knock on doors, they spoke to local people, and they searched all the secret hiding places that the boys had in the local area. A £500 reward was then offered for any information, and then in February of 1997, a press conference was held with both mothers pleading for information and for their boys to come home safe. However, despite this, like I said before, it never made it past local media. In future years, in later years, it did make it past local media, but immediately it was just completely not acknowledged by any national media. In April 1997, Paddy and David became the first children in the UK to appear on milk cartons, and it was hoped that this would be as successful as its American counterpart. However, despite appearing on the 4-pint cartons in Iceland, it still didn't make it past local media, and no leads came forward about the boys. Not only were they now being branded as runaways by the police, they were being branded as runaways by the local media, and it's thought that this hindered efforts to find the boys, as people weren't looking as hard to find them because they thought that these boys were just street cred, streetwise, and they would come home eventually. As mentioned earlier, the bike that Paddy was gifted, an Apollo Laser, was found abandoned behind the petrol station. It wasn't until a few weeks after the date it was found that it was actually established to be Paddy's. And now that it's made some more national media, they're starting to question whether this was a huge mistake in the case. Should this evidence have been taken more seriously? Would there have been more leads if the bike had been taken as serious evidence in the first place? So, as part of this whole 20-year campaign, the BBC actually spoke to Mark Cohen, who was a former Birmingham Mail reporter, and he spent years reporting on the Patrick Warren and David Spencer case, and he believes that the class of the boys stopped the investigation from being as big as it could have been. He believes if these boys had been middle class or upper class, had been well-behaved angels, that they would have made it into the national news and it would have got more police support. But because the boys were of the class that they were, it didn't get taken as seriously. Experts also believe that there is a stereotype, so to speak, of certain cases that make it into the media. So for example, in the first 2 weeks of Holly and Jessica going missing, and I don't like to compare because obviously every missing child deserves to be found equally, but this is just an example that I read online while doing my research. In the first 2 weeks of Holly and Jessica going missing, 600 articles were written, and that was across local and national newspaper. However, they wanted to stress that it wasn't just because the boys were boys. In the first 2 weeks of runaway Hannah Williams being missing, only 60 articles were written about her, and she turned up dead. Now, we all know that the first 48 hours of a missing persons investigation are the most important because they're the most vital times in finding a child. Had this been taken more seriously, would the boys have been found? I guess it isn't good to speculate, but it's just a question to put out there to think about. So experts say that obviously the first 24 hours are the most important in a missing child case, and that children are usually killed within 6 hours of being taken. So a lot of people say this was a huge red flag and should have been taken more seriously because of the boys' ages. They were only 11 and 13, as I've mentioned. So in 2006, police followed a number of false leads, and this led them to say that this was a no-body murder. At the time of the boys' disappearance, the sex offenders register didn't exist. However, in 2006 it did, so they questioned all of these people in the area, but no leads came through from that either. In late February 1997, they dug up fields, they dug up mines, they dug up different areas where they thought the boys' bodies could be, but again this led to nothing. And this is what led the police to their first suspect, paedophile Bryant Field, who was living only a few miles away in Solihull at the time of the boys' disappearance. 3 years later, he was caught on a drink driving charge and DNA was taken from Brian. This led to him being arrested and convicted for the 1968 rape and murder of schoolboy Roy John. He'd already served a prison sentence for kidnapping and raping a boy in 1980s. He already served a prison sentence for kidnapping and raping a boy in the 1980s. Now, Bryant Field was a landscape gardener. Does this mean that he could have easily disposed of the bodies had he kidnapped and killed the boys? Police did dig up a space of land that he used as his dumping ground, but again, nothing was found to lead to the whereabouts of the boys. Experts believe that Field may never confess if he was the one responsible for the boys' murders, because he loves the thrill of upsetting the families, he loves the thrill of the chase, and the police still looking for the bodies. So, obviously, we've discussed this quite a bit in the case, but some people argue that a lot of this comes with a class thing. Obviously, we see in media that certain genders, certain classes, certain ethnicities make it into the media when they're missing, compared to other cases that really need the coverage but just didn't get it. I'm sure this brings up discussions with things like Maddie McCann, but I'm not going to get into this video because this video is not about her. All the family wants is answers. They want to put their boys to rest. In 2016, on the 20-year anniversary, David's older brother made an emotional TV appeal for anybody with information to be able to bring the boys' bodies home.
I've been the same since.
I always think of him constantly, every day. There's not a day that goes by that I haven't thought of him in one way, shape or form. But yeah, it's tough. Christmas time is very, very tough.
This is, like all of my cases, a tragic case, and like I say, it brings up a lot for discussion. Let me know what you think in the comments. Obviously, this is going to be one that brings up a lot of discussion. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you next time. Please like and subscribe if you thought this video was informative.